Welcome, everybody, to a new episode of our Glowing Climate Founder Series. I'm so happy to introduce Julia. As I mentioned, Julia is the CEO and co-founder of Sway, material innovation startup scaling seaweed-based home compostable packaging. And Julia spent over a decade designing brand and packaging systems for consumer good companies, technology startups, and design studios around the world. Her work is driven by a deep passion for regenerative design and biological circularity. Sway's patented products match the vital performance attributes of conventional plastics, but are designed to plug in existing infrastructure while being recyclable. Unlike plastic, these materials are made from abundant regenerative source and decompose into a healthy soil after use. Welcome, Julia.
I'm really happy to be here.
So before we start the slide, what I was thinking is to show a little bit the product, and we have a few slides for our audience. So maybe you can give us a bit of a voiceover, if that's okay.
Sure. Yeah, happy to. So
All right.
Sway started in 2020 with my co-founder, who's also my life partner, Matt. I have a background in design. He has a background in sustainable development. And we thought we could really build a system that was rooted in responsible design that could scale in partnership with nature. And we are totally enraptured with seaweed, which we'll talk about. But really, the foundation of the company is we're working with seaweed, which you'll see on the next slide, as the primary feedstock for a pellet. And this pellet is designed to work with existing infrastructure. And that pellet can melt and flow on its own, or it can be combined with other compostable polymers to create all different types of plastic replacements. But the idea is it comes from nature and it returns to nature. We're really proud of what we can make with this pellet. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see our flagship product, which is called TPC Flex, Thermoplastic Seaweed Flex. It's a film that is strong and durable, but doesn't last forever. And it's produced using the most scaled plastic infrastructure on Earth. So you'll actually show in the next slide how it's made. This is really, really hard to do. We found a way to integrate seaweed into blown film infrastructure. So the video you see on the left is a 50-foot tall, 35-inch wide bubble that's being blown like bubble gum, but it's seaweed. And then it can be converted into bags and all different types of packaging, which are shown on the next slide as well. So we're really proud of how we've been able to scale this in partnership with the traditional plastic industry. And this material is now in the world. So brands are using it, and we'll talk much more about how we've brought it to market. But I'm really proud of our ability to work with nature and then design for systems that already exist. So that's about all. And yeah, Sway is a material innovation lab. So we're constantly coming up with fun new stuff. And I think we'll talk about some of that in our conversation today.
Very cool. And you're located in the Bay Area.
And we're in the Bay Area. Yeah.
Amazing. Let's stop the slide and get back to you. So you mentioned you have a background as a designer. I have to say, after Laureen Menard also talk about GOB, we have quite a few designers coming here, but it's also kind of a big step to go from design, even if it's packaging, to biology as a new material. And I'd love to understand how you did that jump.
I think designers are really well qualified to be founders because we can make the impossible visible for others. That's what my mentor, Brian Collins, says. So I think while intimidating as someone who has zero experience in material innovation, certainly I think designers can look at the system and find patterns and kind of organize complexity. And then work in partnership with really amazing material engineers, scientists, manufacturers to bring that vision to life. So that's what I did. And in the early days, I became very comfortable with saying, I don't know. And then, working with people who had that background.
Love the humility. I think so many times we don't say that we don't know, and we slow our own growth this way. But also, do you want to take us back? Like, when did you have the spark? Because were you passionate about seaweed, or how did it all come out?
I was working in design and thought my purpose is to create beauty in the world, which I think probably a lot of us resonate with. And then I went to grad school because I wanted to have a sense of my place in the history of design. Very dramatic. But while I was there, I realized that it was an opportunity to use my master's thesis to create work of consequence. And I was earning this master's in design with a focus on designer as author. And I thought I could really solve a problem that I've been confronted with in my work, which was I was designing a lot of beautiful packaging systems that I knew were ending up as trash. And wouldn't it be amazing if instead of becoming trash, it became something that was good for the planet? So I started exploring and really becoming much more familiar with the circular economy and finding all these package free solutions and reusable solutions and recyclable solutions. And then found that there was kind of this like overlooked bucket, which is the third pillar of the circular economy. It's regenerate nature. And what if we could use nature to actually replenish the planet? So I looked at all these amazing feedstocks. There's mycelium and shrimp shells and agricultural waste and pea protein and microbes, and there's seaweed. And seaweed's just the best. I grew up in the Monterey Bay Aquarium, so I knew seaweed really well. And that became the centerpiece of my thesis, which ultimately became the sway that we all know today.
Seaweed is indeed fascinating. I just learned recently how many species you have in seaweed, and yeah, the
Mhm,
circularity and the fact they can absorb carbon is also very encouraging.
mhm,
But it's also, I was thinking, it's a very multi-dimensional problem, right? You need consumer behavior to change, you need the technology,
mhm.
you need the scalability, you need supply chain, potentially regulation. As a founder in still early stage company, where do you start? Like, which piece of the puzzle do you move first to get the whole domino effect?
Started first with research on consumer behavior and the supply chain. So the idea being, if we're wildly successful, what are the possible outcomes there? What I don't want to do as a founder is replicate some of um, the woes of the past, and I would never want to mimic what we've seen in monoculture land agriculture happening in aquaculture or in seaweed cultivation, because to solve any portion of the plastic problem you would need hypothetically a lot of seaweed. So my co-founder and I started by visiting seaweed farms on the ground, talking to a lot of marine biologists, learning from the wise seaweed community, which is, seen waves of innovation starting with algae fuel, and now looking a lot at ocean regeneration, carbon sequestration packages, as well as seaweed being a food source, and saying, how could biomaterials fit into this? And could we responsibly source seaweed in a way that actually improved ocean health? So we did all of that first. And then once we kind of got the thumbs up from the ocean community, we said, all right, we're going to go ahead and invent this totally new technology, which we've now done.
Amazing. We'll talk about partnership. I think they're a big part of what helps also with customer behavior. But I also wanted to touch a little bit on the ecosystem in California. I was lucky enough to see you in person a few weeks ago. And the roundtable was a lot of people doing innovation, whether it was ink or yourself and partners. Can you describe for people who are not familiar, what's the ecosystem like in California or the Bay Area, and how is everybody helping each other or potentially inspiring each other?
Oh, I think so. I don't know
Mhm.
if everyone's we're definitely very fortunate to not be operating in isolation. So um, there's a very collaborative approach, where we have deep partnerships with our suppliers, with our manufacturing partners, with our customers, and then with the folks who test that our material actually decomposes. Um, I don't know if this is unique to the Bay Area, but in general, I've found that the climate community is really welcoming, and we're all, under operating through the belief system that, rising tides lift all boats. So there's definitely a contagious, supportive environment that we're benefiting from.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating. So people here on this call who are looking for local opportunity, I would say, just reach out. So talking about growth, obviously funding is part of that. And you recently raised a 5 million seed round. So congrats for that. With a group led by Third Nature, from what I understand. But can you tell us a bit more about what's been your approach to fundraising and finding the right investors? How
Mhm.
was the journey? It's always a very hot topic for founders in this call to
Mhm.
understand the behind the scene. Can you share a bit more about your story in this space?
When we got started, we were bootstrapped, and my co-founder Matt and I started by working with fellows to do that research of really building out the business plan and the supply chain. We then applied to a prize called the Beyond the Bag Challenge, and I feel this is such a good way for most startups to get their footing is take non-dilutive capital from a prize if you can. And honestly, at that time, we didn't have a product, so the only reason we won the prize was because we painted a really explicit vision of what we planned to do, and then we actually did do it. And that initial funding, which was $80,000, allowed us to hire our first engineer who came from the plastics industry. And he set up our first lab in our garage, which is downstairs from where I'm sitting right now. Very classic startup story, starting in the garage, using kitchen equipment to figure out how to make our first viable prototypes. And that happened honestly much faster than I thought it would. We had something compelling enough to get a partnership with the USDA. They had better equipment accessible to us, and that allowed us to raise our first pre seed, which we thought was going to just be an angel round, but ended up being venture backed and was a $2.5 million round that allowed us to build out a real lab and a real product and build real customer relationships and a real supply chain that ultimately catapulted us towards this growth. So it's been um, weirdly linear, but it really started with us taking a big leap of faith in the beginning.
And how time consuming was getting the award? Is it something you spent a lot of time on trying to get new grants, or was it more like getting the company starting?
I think it was total serendipity that the challenge was designed for a company like us, where Target, Walmart, CVS were saying, "We don't like plastic bags. Does anyone have a solution?" And us saying, "Yes." I think coming out of grad school, my perception of how much time was appropriate to spend on an application is distorted. So at the time, it felt like this is totally reasonable, but maybe I would have a different perspective today. But yeah, really, it was fortunate that what we were designing, there was a huge commercial demand for, and at the time, and this was 2020, businesses were really seeking to move on the issue of plastic, given just the change in consumer perception, more data around microplastics, and this kind of like urgency to figure something out.
Do you feel today that the consumer behavior is ahead of the brand's commitment, or how do you see the world? Because I'm right now spending time in France, and I feel like the sustainability agenda is still everywhere. Obviously, in the US, we're a little bit more cautious about
Mhm.
what's going to happen. How do you think about it?
Do not believe that the solutions or the implementation of the solutions has been synchronized. And there's a lot of competing arguments for why you should switch away from plastic. One is about end of life, and one is about origin of life. And I think most brands are making decisions based on scope 3 emissions, and they're thinking about the overall footprint of the packaging, and plastic makes a really strong case if you're making material selection based on that. If you care about end of life and is the material likely to end up recycled, I think it's easier to make an argument for like a paper-based solution with really high rates of recycling. And then if you care about origin, those are the groups that tend to be most interested in working with us, where you want this generous origin story, and there's a lot of materials like sway that can tell that responsible sourcing story. But I don't think it's synchronized, and we're only seeing demand for plastics going up. I think a greater consumer demand, oftentimes the reason that you're choosing to buy from a company is because you like the quality of the material, and quality, I think, is correlated with responsible sourcing. So it's just the sweet spot for us. We've been working with groups like Burton, J. Crew, Faraday, Florence, Prana, Alex Crane. These are all pretty mission aligned brands where they want to tell the story of responsible sourcing, and that extends to their packaging. And they're thinking about their plastic footprint and their customers' care as well.
So, what does a partnership with these brands look like? Are they involved in any of the product development? Can you give us a little bit of behind the scene of how you
Mhm.
partner? Because those are really big brands. I can imagine also the scale at which they operate can
Mhm.
be intimidating. How does it work?
Today, I think we've almost perfected it, where we're working with our packaging distributors, and we have the full force of their logistics and, conversion partners. We have the support of their team, and then we can really work together with the brand to focus on customer feedback, storytelling. So right now, an example would be working with Florence, which is the Olympic surfer John Florence's like outdoor brand, and we have huge buy-in from John himself as well as the whole Florence team. They were connected to us through our partners at Lonely Whale, which is a nonprofit. They're really invested in adopting new materials, so we've got the champion, but then we're really talking to them about what's your dream for how this comes into the world. While our packaging distributor will take our material and actually do the process of turning our material into bags, printing it, getting it to the factories, making sure that it's performing the way that it needs to. So there's a lot of people involved in that partnership, and a lot of buy-in from the folks at the top.
Did you have any particular like guerrilla marketing with any of these brands? Because I saw you in so many media. I know Vogue and Business Insiders. You got a lot of coverage, but was really exciting. How are these partnerships also helping from the marketing side and visibility of the brand?
We were really fortunate to win first place in the Tom Ford Plastic Innovation Prize, which was organized by that nonprofit Lonely Whale. And so that kind of catapulted us into a different uh, space of visibility where folks thought, wow, Tom Ford thinks seaweed's cool. Well, I've got to learn more about this. It was a connector to all kinds of amazing brands, including the ones that I listed. And then there is kind of a just general collective interest, I think, from like a more and more mainstream audience where people want to feel good about the products that they're making. They want to know about the solutions. They're fascinated by seaweed. And as a result, we get to, yeah, collaborate with a lot of amazing storytellers and publications and even documentaries. We had 3 documentary crews come through our lab last year. We'll be on CBS this week. I think people just are like, "What, seaweed? That's amazing. A reason to be hopeful." And we're happy to open our doors to them.
Yeah, I feel like there's an emotional connection. I don't know if it's people spend time in the ocean, but there's a lot of fascination I can see. Palin is asking, what are the biggest obstacles with getting buy-in from major brands?
Largest challenge is really, I think, the process of innovation. I wish it were faster. Materials specifically like take a lot of time to design and optimize. And so over the past few years, I think one of the greatest challenges has been we'll develop the material and we'll scale it up to a certain stage. And then we need to get feedback from the brand on how the material performs in the real world. And that just takes time. Like shipping a material from um, I don't know, Thailand to the United States, capturing feedback and then incorporating that into our material and our scale up and our quality and our whole process. It's just really time consuming. So I would love to see this solution just be perfect right out the gate, but of course there's going to be areas that we need to optimize and we can't really move fast enough.
So you showed us the big bubble that seems very challenging to build. Was there any other technical challenges you had to solve along the way?
Oh yes, yeah. Yeah, seaweed is charming and wonderful it is as it is, and I didn't really explain this, but the reason that we love seaweed as a feedstock for a replacement to plastic is that it has plastic-like qualities. So seaweed on its own, you can imagine it swaying underwater. It's stretchy. It has this kind of gel-like property. That's why we fell in love with it in the beginning, is it has natural polymers inside of it. The problem with that is it also loves moisture. And as we've been trying to design our materials to fit into traditional infrastructure, we also have to kind of quarrel with like what the material inherently craves. And that's see the seaweed in our product will find the moisture in the air and suck it into the pellets or the film that we're creating. So we've had to find ways to resolve that over time. And we finally are in a sweet spot, but I think it'll continue to be a little bit of a challenge.
And I understand on the production side, you work closely with Enco and Close. Can you explain a bit more the context and how this relationship is working?
Yeah, we're so grateful to our distribution partners. Originally, the way I visioned coming to the market was we're going to work with pellets and we're going to sell the pellets and anybody can make anything with the pellets. And then we're also going to make rolls of film and we'll turn those, we'll sell the rolls of film. And then we'll also make finished packaging and anyone can, buy packaging from Sway. And that proved to be just way too complicated for the stage of the company and our small team, which is just 10 folks. And so this year we've really focused, and last year we've really focused on the distribution partnership, where we're selling rolls of film to groups like Eco and Close, who specialize in sustainable packaging. They sell all kinds of packaging solutions, cardboard and bags and all kinds of options. But they'll take the film, they'll test it, they'll make sure that it stands up in terms of quality. They'll convert it into bags, they'll print it, and then actually distribute it to our customers, as well as offering it in their marketplace. So it's just been, it's been a huge investment of time on their side, and then a lot of patience to have that quicker feedback process, so we can improve our materials for the market.
And I was lucky enough to hear from them also at the roundtable, and they were raving about the partnership. So I think the time was well spent validating this one.
We're really lucky to work with them because the thing is, once we've fully validated our materials with Eco Enclose, we're better positioned to service much larger brands and packaging distributors who can really take us to the commercial scale volumes.
What I'm seeing a lot in the world of biomaterial is obviously the technology challenge, the behavior challenge, but obviously also the cost aspect.
Mhm.
Um, I know it's early stage, but what's your plan? And do we see any green premium that people are willing to pay to get better, more sustainable packaging? How's
Mhm.
your equation on that point?
We're still in the scale up phase, so of course there's a premium today, but because we can work with traditional infrastructure, there's a path for us to be fairly affordable. We want to really get it right domestically first. So all of our packaging converter and distributor partners are based domestically right now. But the next step is to move overseas and take advantage of some of those economies of scale and greater efficiency in how the product's made. So that there is a path to being really affordable and competitive with the alternatives on the market.
That's awesome. I think a big topic we want to address at SF Climate Week is how we design those better products that sustain themselves also financially and can really be such a no-brainer value proposition that we really hope adoption is going to skyrocket.
Yeah.
And by the way, I have a question from Dan on customers' behavior. What do you want end customers to do with sway packaging, and how do you educate them that it's not plastic?
Yeah, great question. Really important, especially through the design lens. So the material is designed for compost. It's home and industrially compostable, meaning that you can mix it in with your food scraps if you compost at home, or you can put it in your green bin if where you live accepts compostable packaging, or you can put it in an industrial compost. We have to message that pretty clearly on the packaging, but then the material itself feels a little different from plastic. So my hope is that there's visual cues. And we usually have some print on it that says, this is made with seaweed, or, please compost me in big blocky letters. But in addition to that, just feeling the material, you'll know it. There's a little bit of a texture to it that might make a consumer say, "Wait a second, I think this is not plastic."
Yeah, I was amazed touching the product. Some feels very silk-like. Um, yeah, I'm not teasing, but you should all try and get your hand on some of these bags just to see them. Um, Oriana has a very specific question about TPC Flex, and she's asking if it's made 100% out of seaweed.
That would be the dream. Yeah, I would love to make 100% seaweed products. The the sweet um, the sweet spot for us is a combination of seaweed and plants to create our core product, which is thermoplastic seaweed. And so this is the gelling, natural polymer that's in seaweed being activated by a plasticizer that also comes from plants. And our core product, TPC, is 100% bio-based and it's majority seaweed content, which makes it really special. And on its own, it can melt and flow and turn into all different types of products. But then TPC Flex specifically is a blend where, in order to meet the scale, the speed, the temperatures of the plastic industry and these fragile bubbles that I was showing you, we integrate another home compostable polymer to get that tolerance for those industrial conditions. So not 100% seaweed, but we're working towards always increasing seaweed content, and then wherever possible, getting as close to 100% bio-based as well.
Just circling back, you mentioned at the beginning working with the biomarine industry. Where is the seaweed sourced from? Do you have global sourcing? How does it
We
work?
work we work with seaweed farmers all around the world, though the vast majority of the seaweed industry, commercial seaweed industry, is based in Southeast Asia. But we have farming partners in France. We have partners in Madagascar, in Chile, in Australia, actually every continent in the world except for Antarctica, though I did learn that seaweed grows in Antarctica as well. So that might be when it's responsible to do so, just to say we have all the continents. But yeah, we're working with ocean farms that are based in each of these regions where we've vetted how the material is being cultivated, the impact on the ocean or water quality, impacts for farmers, and basically making sure that our sourcing strategy is only a net positive wherever we're getting our seaweed.
That's amazing. I don't think most of us realize that there are so many different production of seaweed and now so many use cases, which is really wonderful. We talked a little bit about how you got featured in a lot of documentaries and people are naturally curious about the space. And you mentioned the word storytelling a few times. So I'm curious to understand from a commercial and marketing perspective, what have you tried that maybe didn't work and what's been really successful? Since we often have founders in this podcast, we like sharing a little bit of the tips and learning so they can
Mhm.
also accelerate their own growth. What can you share with us?
I think as a founder, maybe if I were looking back, some of our investments in storytelling were premature. So we might have a foundational technology, but we don't have the scale yet. And we might build a lot of excitement from Vogue and receive all these inbound inquiries, but not have something to send. So that would be a big learning, is like the readiness. However, it's hard to regret that because it's all laddered up to this momentum where we now have thousands of people who want to engage with us. And we get to work with these amazing brands because we were visible from the beginning. And so much of decision making is emotional. And it's really important to me that people care about materials. And some of these topics are not traditionally sexy. Plastic manufacturing, not sexy. Compost, almost sexy. So a lot of our storytelling is centered on yeah, we love the ocean, but how can we get people to also care about this legacy industry in the United States and all around the world that's really, backed up against the wall right now in terms of public perception? And how can we partner with legacy industry to change the future? And then how can we engage better in systems of biological circularity in a way that feels easy and accessible and fun. So yeah, storytelling critical for all those.
You mentioned the team of 10. How is your approach to growing the team? Where do you invest? Is AI also scaling your team? I know it's a big topic for all of us, and we heard really cool stories about founder using AI in the world of biology for protein engineering. But I'm curious, is it helpful for you on the product development, or have you found other way? And if not, how you're growing with human? What's the balance?
Totally. We've always been small. So we've always been around a dozen folks or less. The reason for that being I want to remain as capital light as possible while we're inventing a totally new material. The majority of our team is R&D or product, engineers, scientists, figuring out how to make seaweed melt and then how to do that at scale. Although we do have someone who manages all our manufacturing relationships and seaweed supply, our amazing communications lead, really, managing our community and our storytelling, and then operations. So we're not really relying on AI in any significant way besides building greater efficiency for any of the team. And then there are some emerging tools designed for companies like mine that I think we'll use more in the future once they're more mature, which is like, how can we save time in material development? For example, to invent TPC, we went through about 400 different formulations, and there are 10,000 plus species of seaweed, and there are so many different natural materials that we can be incorporating into our formulations. So to really save time, I think we'll be relying on machine learning to help get there faster. The delicate dance being how do you do that without jeopardizing IP that we may like to protect the work that we've done. But yeah, beyond that, just efficiency in planning and budgeting and forecasting and that kind of thing.
Well, if you're planning on hiring, this group is also a great source of talent. So let us know. We also have a platform we
We have
share.
one role open right now, which is a channel partner manager, and this is focused on managing the relationships with these distributors and helping us grow. So anyone with that background, please do apply.
I wanted to understand a little bit on the future of Sway. Are you going to do more type of packaging? Are you considering potentially other feedstock in that chain? What excites you the most?
There's a lot I'm excited about. I mean, we've been laser focused on the poly bag, which is just this ubiquitous type of packaging. There's 180 billion poly bags used in the fashion industry every year. Like billion, 180 billion. It's crazy. However, there's so many different categories of flexible packaging I really want to tackle, including the retail bag. Beyond flexible plastics, I just want to be focused on materials that are likely to end up as pollution or that are basically impossible to recycle. And that's usually little small component parts. There are a lot of like durable accessories that we use in our everyday lives that often get lost or end up in nature. So I love the idea that Sway could help tackle things like that, where we're going to create a non-toxic, biodegradable alternative. And then I'm enraptured by agricultural waste. So we're doing some fun things behind the scenes, blending together this super regenerative origin story of seaweed with agricultural waste, which just needs a home.
Like you need to come back in a few months and tell us more about the next step of the story.
Happy to.
I have a question from Greg. As you review those options for species, could you talk about a bit about sargassum and your new lab Puerto Rico partnership?
Oh, thanks. You teed me right up, Greg. Thanks. This was one of the coolest projects we've engaged on. This is a great example of collaboration resulting in both impact, but also a positive performance outcome. So we engaged with New Lab and Puerto Rico, Invest Puerto Rico, on a project where we were using the seaweed, the sargassum that's washing ashore in the Caribbean, in our products. For those who don't know, there is a massive blob of sargassum out in the Atlantic that's estimated to be somewhere around 10 million metric tons. And it's this kind of barbed seaweed that doesn't have a holdfast, so it can just float and multiply and it's feeding on agricultural runoff. It's become this massive problem. If anyone's been to Cancun or Belize recently, you'll have seen it washing on shore. It's a big problem in Puerto Rico as well. So there, we worked with a partner that is harvesting that sargassum, processing it to get the natural polymer, and then it's the way we incorporated it into our formulations. And I thought, that's just really amazing. It's an amazing sourcing story. It's this invasive species. It's causing all these problems. How great that we can use it. Then it actually improved the performance of our product. So we're going to continue in that project. The big roadblock being lots of seaweed, not enough processing, and it's kind of an uncharismatic seaweed. That's a nice way of putting it. It's hard to process. So that's going to be the bottleneck for now. But we're really interested in engaging further with that.
Our chat is really getting active. We have a lot of questions. Oregon is asking if you're already using agricultural waste to derive the polymer that you mix with seaweed.
We have some in the works. Right now, the seaweed sourcing infrastructure that's commercialized is centered on the pharmaceutical or food industries, where you have a super pure seaweed polymer. And we really don't need that for biomaterials. So it's possible to source like waste, semi-waste or less refined seaweed, but it's something that needs to expand. And that's a big initiative for us as well.
God. Ryan is asking, can you talk more to the balance of brands versus distribution partners when it comes to winning contracts? Are you getting buy-in from brands and then executing through partners? Are those partners selling for you?
Combination of both, but a heavier emphasis on the distribution partner because they have a sales team of a dozen folks dedicated to moving sway material. So we have a tremendous amount of leads, but not the in-house capacity to manage all those relationships. The distributor has the sales team that can actually take care of all those different accounts and move the material. Yeah. But we have direct relationships with brands where we're more focused on innovation. So we'll partner really closely on a totally new form factor or a totally new formulation that's designed for something special. That's our sweet spot.
So you say there's a lot of inbound leads and people are exciting. So you see I was about to say the wave to rise, really. That's amazing. That's a very great things to hear.
Yeah, well, it's not just packaging, right? You're helping create benefit across all of your packaging goals, but also your impact goals. So the base criteria is the material works. It does a good job of protecting the product. And then it also is replenishing ocean health. The source material is sequestering carbon. It's creating like habitat. It's improving biodiversity. It's creating coastal employment. It's just like all these boxes are being checked. And then it doesn't turn into pollution. It composts after it's used. So I think there's lots of entry points for wanting to work with our material. And then lots of reasons to say yes after you learn more.
Do you have a dream brand you'd like to partner with?
Trader Joe's.
Okay.
I feel like, yeah. Anyone who's walked down the Trader Joe's aisle is like, man, they use a lot of bags. Feels like there's some opportunity there.
I also know on this call, we have people who haven't made the move to climate tech yet or biotech. So for these people, I would love to hear any advice you have to make that transition.
Mm-hmm. I think the climate industry needs everybody, needs all the skill sets, like really fabulous and efficient financial planning and accountants and, you know, computer programmers and designers. Like it's a call to every skill set. I think it's, yeah, I would say that as a person who's not yet made the transition, engaging in groups like the Climate Draft or being really involved in like online communities like My Climate Journey can be a great starting place. Everyone here has already taken that first step, obviously. And then I think it's kind of contagious when you meet climate founders or climate companies, getting introduced to like 3 other companies and just showing a genuine interest in how the business works and the challenges that they're confronted with is a great entry point. I've definitely hired at least half a dozen people onto the team just because I had interactions like that, where there was genuine interest, genuine follow up. And then maybe we weren't even hiring, but someone just came to us being like, this is the future. I need to help make it happen. And we're like, yes, we do need help in that category. Okay, please come along and join us. So yeah, I would say persistence, honestly. And then finding like a category within this very broad array of climate solutions that you're really passionate with and that you can imagine um, spending a lot of time stressed and excited about.
Not bad. Oh, more questions. Okay, let me keep up. Very specific question from Oriane. Have you tried different colors for the palettes and the film?
Oh, we're gonna. It's coming. Yeah. This is we've done a lot of printing. So the material is fully printable in all the ways possible with color as well. But yeah, we're starting to receive custom requests of I want a green film or I want a blue film. So we'll start producing in different colors. Yes.
From your view, what's the future of American seaweed farming production?
We need to see more investment in processing, that being the bottleneck to accessing lots of different markets. Specifically on the West Coast, lots of legislation that needs to probably change. More science is coming in right now that will open up permitting so that people can be farming on the West Coast. Partnership between farming and restoration efforts, I think, is probably the most streamlined way to get there. And then there's certain boundaries on what type of seaweed can even grow on, you know, the East Coast up in Alaska or on the West Coast. So there's been some investment in like more climate resilient, non-reproducing strains of seaweed. If anyone wants to chat in a very deep way about this, I'm happy to. But yeah, there's a lot of work being done, but it's I think mainly blocked by legislation and then the actual processing to and end markets for that seaweed.
Are you working with your manufacturing partners so that the production step is aligned with the whole storytelling about circularity and replenishing the planet while making useful material and products?
Yeah, and that's been amazing. That's one of the biggest blessings of last year is we found this champion legacy plastic manufacturer. They're one of the largest specialty film manufacturers in the country, and they believe in seaweed and they believe in our story. We showed up on site at their manufacturing facility, and it was the first run that we did with this particular manufacturer. And it's in the, it's in the Midwest, and these guys are like, you're this company from Berkeley and you're working with seaweed, and there's a lot of disbelief. But then we got the material running and their eyes widen and they think, oh my God, like this actually can work. And all of a sudden they're a part of the solution. And by the end of the day, they're like, I want a sleigh vest. Like I need to represent, I believe in this. I want to make it happen. And I think that goes hand in hand with there being, C-suite level priorities around sustainability, having a broader array of sustainable offerings as part of a portfolio. And it's not perfect. They're still making a lot of plastic, but this is definitely the right step in the right direction.
One last question, unless there's more in the chat, but from me, how can this community help you?
If anyone's working on something related to making compost more accessible or composting infrastructure, I would love to chat with you. More specific or less specific, I guess, following along with our journey at Sway the Future on all socials, subscribing to our newsletter for new opportunities, and then send us relevant customers who seem like they are committed to innovation and want to try seaweed packaging, which they can learn more about at swaythefuture.com or at our partner websites, ecoenclosed.com.
Thank you so much, Julia. That was just enlightening. And it's always such a pleasure to see you. And it's a privilege for me to host you today. So thanks again.
Thank you all.
Have a great day. Take care, everyone. Bye.